This is the Flaming Star Nebula, captured over 6 icy nights here in Sweden. 19 hours of exposure, sub-zero temperatures, and a runaway star lighting up a cosmic flame. My name is Morten and welcome back to Frosth Astrophotography. Today I'm taking you behind the scenes of my latest deep sky project, the Flaming Star Nebula, also known as SH2-229. I captured this over 6 sessions between mid-November and mid-December, battling snow, cold and clouds, but the result was worth it. I'm going to show you how I captured this target and my complete workflow in PixInsight to bring out these stunning SHO colors. For this project, I used the SkyWatcher HEQ5 Pro with a Rowan belt mod and upgraded bearings, paired with the EvoStar 80 ED Pro refractor and the 0.85x reducer. The main camera was the Player One Poseidon-M Pro Mono with the Phoenix 7-position filter wheel and a series SHO filters. Guiding was handled by the EvoGuide 50 ED and the ASI 120mm Mini. Across 6 sessions, I collected 75 S2, 76H alpha and 76 O3 exposures, all 300 seconds each, for a total of 19 hours of integration. What makes this nebula unique is the star illuminating it, AE Aurigae. This is a massive O-type blue star, roughly 30,000 times more luminous than our Sun. But here's the fascinating part. AE Aurigae wasn't born here. It's a runaway star. Astronomers believe it was ejected from the Orion Nebula region about 2 million years ago during a collision of 2 binary star groups. It is currently just passing through this cold cloud of gas by chance. Its intense ultraviolet radiation is ionizing the hydrogen gas, creating the red emission glow we see in hydrogen alpha, while the blue regions are actually reflection nebula, starlight bouncing off interstellar dust. Once AE Aurigae moves on, this nebula will fade back into darkness. Here we have 19 hours worth of data on the Flaming Star Nebula, and that is 76 light frames of H alpha, 76 light frames of oxygen 3, and 75 light frames of sulfur 2, all 300 seconds or 5 minutes. These have been stacked and prepared to be processed in the linear phase. Let's just examine the data here, looking for bright halos. I've had problems with that with the ZWO first generation filters. You can see a little bit of tendencies here, but I would say that this is acceptable. I will remove the stars in my way of processing anyway, so this is not going to be a problem. For the O3 here, I think it is very good. it's not uncommon that we have a lot brighter halos in the O3 in cheaper filters, but this is okay. There's a little bit of gradients here, but that will be taken care of when we are moving forward with the linear processing. For the linear processing stage, I always start with a dynamic crop and maybe some rotation if needed. For this data, I gathered everything within 1 month, so it is not apparent that we have any large stacking artifacts at the edges here. That could be the case. If it is, you might need to crop in a little bit more to get rid of that, but in this case it's fine. Then I always run through some kind of background management. In this case, I used the automatic DBE. I will demonstrate on the O3 here. I use the standard default settings. And you can see if we stretch the background removal here that we have eliminated the gradients in the corners. We can compare before and after here. I will do a screen stretch on the after, and you can see the before here on the left. You can see some gradients in the corners here, but on the right here we have eliminated everything of that. So I would say you don't have to run anything else than the automatic dynamic background extraction for this one. Repeat this for all filters, and when you are done, make sure that you run a linear fit. So you equalize the brightness among all 3 filters at this point. The next step in my processing is always blur exterminator and noise exterminator. You can compare on the screen here. To the left you have H alpha with the dynamic crop, and on the right you have the same light frame with blur and noise exterminator. And you can see a big improvement as always with the star size, and maybe some sharpening and contrast on the non-stellar objects in the image here. And I really like this tool, as many of you do, I think. When that step is done for all 3 filters, I run through a batch job of star exterminator, creating a starless and a stars version of all 3 filters. And this is the H alpha starless. I can run a screen stretch on that just to demonstrate the data, and I really like the quality of this data here. It's not just the apparent main object with the flaming star here and this area that is illuminated by the major star in the area. This is going to be a little bit bluish, I hope, in the final image, and the rest is going to be a version of red, since this is an SHO image. It's not an HOO. It's not hydrogen alpha as bright red, as you will see later. But I still want to go as red as possible. So SHO, but maybe with a more red-blue tone to it. But you can already see here that the 19 hours of data is really paying off, because we have a lot of data in the background, or there's almost no background, I would say here. It's just data everywhere, maybe a little less down here to the right, but in the entire image here we have some very interesting data to work with. So the stretching of this image was not an easy task. I thought maybe I will give it a try with statistical stretch or the multi-adaptive stretch, but no matter how I tried to fiddle with the settings on those, it didn't give me the contrast I wanted in the middle of the object here. So I was left with the old trusted generalized hyperbolic stretch for this image. And even with that, it took a lot of time because you have to keep the stretching level somewhat equal between the different light frames or filters, because if you combine them later it could look very strange. I was going back and forth how much I should stretch the 03, because when I overstretched it the mix was looking very bad. I had areas in the H alpha also that could be overblown when I combined the three filters, because the same area here is also very bright in the S2. So when combining those three, I just had too much brightness going on in this area. But after going back and forth with the stretching here, I decided this level would be good. And these are the three filters that I combined using pixel math, simply placing S2 in red, HA in green, and O3 in blue. And that gave me this image to start with. Now, as you can see here, we have a lot of green, but as you might have noticed from this channel and me lately, I don't run SCNR as a first color calibration step or color correcting step anymore. So this initial SHO integration was a subject for a very long process of masking and color correcting to get a good starting point for moving forward. I'm not going to show the entire color correction process in detail here. I have a separate video on how you can achieve the vibrant colors without using SCNR. I will link that in the description of this video. But the starting point is to the left, and the first color correction steps to the right. And here you can see that I started with that deep orange color in this case. And like I said, I didn't want red, but I didn't want pale SHO colors either. So I have corrected the green, and I also corrected the magenta you see here down to the right, making that a more bluish color. I ran through some sharpening, and a very subtle sharpening, I would say, not very heavy on the details here. I will be adding sharpening effects later when I'm introducing the synthetic luminance step. Additional noise correction, I don't think it was that needed for this image. I don't know if you can see this through the YouTube compression, but we have a slight difference. There are some residual noise in the image here that has been corrected with that, but I don't do any extensive noise corrections these days. If it's needed, I run through Noise Exterminator one more time. Then I added the synthetic luminance. Sometimes I use the starless H-alpha as my luminance. In this case, it affected my image too much, I would say. So I opted to extract luminance from the actual image, and then I processed that synthetic luminance with some extra sharpening and local histogram transformation, and added that back to the image to achieve this sharpened and some deeper contrast look. For this image I also opted to use the dark structure enhance, but a very low setting. You can see that there are some slight differences in the dark areas here of the image, but it's very subtle. You don't want to overdo it here. So a little bit of extra contrast for the dark areas in the image. I think that is nice. And then some more color adjustments. This is often adding a little bit more saturation to some areas. It might be the whole image. It might just be the shadows or midtones. But I felt like the entire image needed a little bit more vibrance. I did not add so much more saturation in this case. We can compare the first image here on the left of the initial SHO integration and the final image in the non-linear step for the starless version. Anyway, to the right here, and I'm pleased with this result. For the stars in this image, I stretched HA03 and S2 separately using generalized hyperbolic stretch, a very gentle stretch. I almost never want to have too prominent or big stars that overpowers the nebula itself or the main object, but in this case maybe a little bit more stars than I usually do. And then I added these stars together with pixel math, with a formula that produces as close to real star color as possible with SHO stars if you don't have RGB. And on those stars I then ran through the image solver, and then I use the spectrophotometric color calibration to color calibrate the stars to make them as close to real colors as possible. The final starless version and the final stars version, I added a little bit of saturation to the stars here, and it's very subtle. You can hardly notice it, but I sometimes opt to add a little bit of saturation to the stars to make them look a little bit more alive, without altering the color calibration from the SPCC. I added the stars and starless version back together again with the screen formula for pixel math, producing this image that I did some final curves adjustments to, bringing the final result to this. The SHO version with synthetic RGB stars of SH2-229 or the Flaming Star Nebula. 19 hours, 227 light frames. I'm very pleased with the result. You could always make versions and alterations. Maybe I would have had this little area more blue or more bright or not so bright. It is always a game of never being content with the final result, but I'm happy with it as it is now. I will see if I will revisit this with some other stretching. It is almost always in the stretching phase that you can make a difference, I would say. And it's also a matter of trying to balance the different filters to each other before joining them. That will control how the result will turn out here. But for now, enjoy this image, and I hope that the weather will change soon. It is snowing and snowing and snowing. Not a clear night in sight up here at 63 degrees north. That makes it hard to gather data for my next object that I need some more time on to be able to complete. "19 hours is a lot of commitment, especially when you have to battle the Swedish winter to get it. But looking at the details in the shock fronts around AE Aurigae, I think it was worth it. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Flaming Star Nebula, consider subscribing not to miss out on more astrophotography from the frozen north.